Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and welcome to running the Loyalist Primarchs in Game. A shorter video just to see how you could run the Primarch models if say you got them, but you aren't fully invested in the Horus Heresy. First up, we have very fittingly the Primarch of the First Legion, Lionel Johnson. He uses a firstborn captain, as do all the rest. The Warlord Traits, I gave him Imperium Sword and Fury of the Lion. Fury of the Lion is an aura that any Dark Angels unit, core or not, adds 1 to their strength whenever they're charging. Relics, I decided to give him either the Teeth of Terra or the Burning Blade, costing either 85 or 90 points respectively, and 1 CP regardless. On the charge, you will be swinging with 9 Strength 7 AP2 damage to attacks, or 6 Strength 9 AP5 damage to attacks, a cheap murderous character that can be kitted to fight infantry or to fight heavier targets, like tanks, but not necessarily dreadnoughts as it's still 2 damage. But that can be fixed with the next revision to this idea. An alt build for the Lion, using a company champion upgraded to chapter champion, Warlord Traits taking the same as previous, and the relic I gave him was the Blade of Triumph. He costs only 70 points and 1 CP. On the charge, he will have 6 Strength 9 AP3 damage 3 attacks. This cheap character can mulch a lot of things in the game with that profile, even with Armor of Contempt running around. Next up is Jagatai Khan of the White Scars, and the datasheet used is of course a captain. And for his Warlord Traits, I gave him Imperium Sword and Trogorian Storm. Trogorian Storm giving him D3 extra attacks whenever he fights. And for his relic, I chose the Scimitar of the Great Khan. What the Scimitar of the Great Khan does is, when resolving an attack made with this weapon on an unmodified wound roll of 6, this weapon has a damage characteristic of 4, meaning he will have 6 plus D3 attacks at strength 6, AV 3, and damage 2, with wound rolls of 6 having damage 4 instead. And next up, we have this short informational PSA. Alt builds going forward. Instead of repeating the same thing over and over again, most Primarchs can use the same loadout as the company champion Lionel, only swapping a Warlord trait, which I will list when important. For Jagatai, I'd recommend running Trophy Taker over Imperium Sword. He would be a perfect character killer and deep strike to get mountains of attacks. And next up is the Wolf himself, Leman Russ of the Space Wolves. Using a captain again, and taking the Imperium Sword or Wolfkin Warlord traits, Wolfkin adds D3 attacks instead of just 1 from Shock Assault, and Imperium Sword is Imperium Sword. For his relic, I gave him the Black Death, which is a relic power axe. He costs 100 points with a relic blade and a power axe. Well, the Space Wolves don't have the best rules to field someone in a model like Leman Russ, but still, he's a take-all-comers. His relic blade can tangle with harder targets, and his power axe can absolutely demolish hordes, getting an extra D6 attacks any time he fights. Next up is Rogel Dorn of the Imperial Fists. Using the captain datasheet, I gave him Imperium Sword and Indomitable. Indomitable means wound rolls of 1 to 3 always fail against him, meaning permanent transhuman physiology. Relics, I gave him the Teeth of Terra, fitting for his massive chainsword, and he costs 85 points and 1 CP. Unfortunately, Imperial Fists in general aren't in a great spot, but he is relatively durable as a good countercharge threat for a gun line, and with the Teeth of Terra, he can chop up a lot of infantry with 9 Strength 6 AP2 damage to attacks, and I don't believe there's an alt build for him using his model as it comes. Next up is Sanguinius. Obviously, the angel and leader of the Blood Angels. His datasheet is, of course, a captain. Using the Warlord traits Artisan of War, which gives him a special issue war gear, and Imperium Sword, of course. Relics, the Armor Indomitus, and a mastercrafted weapon. He costs 120 points and 1 CP, using a relic blade and a jump pack. In summary, Sanguinius is an absolute murder machine. If he charges, he gets 6, or in Assault Doctrine 7, Strength 8 AP3 damage 3 attacks. And he always gets +1 to wound. He can crush most opponents with relative ease. Next up is Ferrous Manus of the Iron Hands. He is of course a captain, Imperium Sword, and Merciless Logic. Merciless Logic allows him that anytime he gets a hit roll of 6, he generates an extra attack, which he has to roll for, but still, it's quite powerful. And of course, Imperium Sword is a great melee warlord trait. For his relics, I gave him the Mastercrafted Weapon on his Thunderhammer, bringing it up all the way to damage 4. But instead, you could also run him with the Gorgon's Chain, which reduces 1 from the wound roll when being shot at, and gives him a 4+ invulnerable save. He costs 105 points and 1 CP. His 4 damage Thunderhammer, Ferrous is completely capable of crushing some skulls against even the hardest targets. And for Butte Gilliman of the Ultramarines, just uses 40k rules. They're pretty much the same thing. Next up is Vulcan of the Salamanders. He's of course a captain. I gave him Forge Master, which adds 2 to his toughness characteristics, ruining any low strength weaponry, because it increases his toughness by 2 all the way to toughness 6. And the Imperium Sword. Relics, I gave him Drake Smiter, which is a rather powerful relic, which allows him to do some pretty insane things. Drake Smiter is a Thunderhammer, but on an unmodified wound roll of 6, add 3 to the damage characteristic of this weapon, bringing it all the way up to damage 6, meaning he can one-shot everyone, spare Gilliman, on this list with relative ease. And finally is Corvus Corax of the Raven Guard. Using a captain, he has Imperium Sword and Master of Vigilance. What Master of Vigilance does is gives him quite the powerful ability, especially with those 2 lightning claws. What it does is, on an unmodified hit roll of a 6, you inflict 1 mortal wound in addition to any other damage. He of course has the Ebon Claws. What the Ebon Claws are a pair of lightning claws, and it makes 2 additional attacks. In addition, you get to re-roll the wound roll, and it gains extra AP and is damage D3. Meaning, while he may seem like a bit weedy, he can easily punch through a lot of mortal wounds, and a lot of wounds in general, since he can re-roll all of his wounds at a high strength number. He can be pretty fighty despite his weedy appearance. And that about wraps up this video, and the next video will be all the Primarchs fighting each other. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a comment, like, and subscribe. I'll be uploading videos all day, every day, for the month of July. I'll see you all tomorrow with the next video. So long.